My name is Elaine Gaines. I'm 32 years old, and on the morning of my wedding, the only message I received from my mother said, "Don't make them feel bad on their vacation." That was it. No, good morning. No, we're running late. No, I'm sorry. Just a warning. Like I was the problem. Like my feelings were an inconvenience she needed me to manage quietly. I stared at the screen while the hotel room hummed around me. Steam drifted from the bathroom where my maid of honor was fixing her hair. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed too loudly. The air smelled faintly of fresh linen and floral perfume. Everything was moving forward. Except me. I read the message again, slower this time, searching for anything I might have missed. A hidden softness. A second sentence that didn't exist. My chest tightened, not sharply, not dramatically, just enough to remind me of an old, familiar ache. This wasn't new. My parents hadn't come to my college graduation either. I'd flown across the country alone, walked across the stage alone, smiled for photos alone. They'd said work was hectic, that they were proud of me anyway. Later, I found out they'd gone on a weekend trip with my brother instead. I told myself it didn't mean anything. When they used my name to open a business credit line without asking, I brushed it off. When my father joked at Christmas that I was a tech fluke with feelings, I laughed with everyone else. When I overheard my mother telling an aunt that I was too sensitive to run anything serious, I pretended I hadn't heard. I always pretended. So even that morning, sitting on the edge of the bed in my robe, phone warm in my hand, part of me still wanted to believe there was an explanation waiting just beyond the screen. I shouldn't have opened Instagram. But muscle memory took over before logic could stop it. The first story that loaded belonged to my brother. A boomerang video. Champagne glasses clinking. Sunlight bouncing off crystal clear water. My parents in the background, smiling easily, smiling the way they never did around me. My sister-in-law leaned into my mother, both of them laughing like they shared a private joke. The caption read, "We finally feel whole." My stomach dropped. I tapped through the next slide. Same pool, different angle. Uncle Greg lounged in a chair, sunglasses on, cigar in hand. The man who claimed family gatherings drained his energy looked perfectly energized now. They were all there, together, in Napa, at the Alberts Resort. I knew that place. I had recommended it to my mother a year earlier when she complained she was exhausted, overwhelmed, unappreciated. She'd scoffed and said it was ridiculous, too extravagant, too indulgent, not her style. Apparently it was her style, just not when it was for me. I set the phone down slowly, like it might explode if I dropped it. My reflection stared back at me from the mirror across the room. My eyes looked distant, unfocused, like I was watching someone else's life crack open. 3 seats. That's how many I had reserved for them in the front row. I had personally checked the spelling on their place cards, tied the silver ribbon myself because the planner's knot looked sloppy. I'd imagined my mother dabbing her eyes during the vows, my father standing stiff and uncomfortable in his suit, pretending he wasn't proud. I hadn't expected perfection. I'd expected presence. My boyfriend Daniel had asked me the week before if I was sure. "Elaine," he said carefully, like he was stepping on thin ice. "What if they don't come?" I remember smiling too quickly. They will, or if they don't, at least I'll know I tried. What I didn't say was that I needed this to be the moment they chose me, that I needed proof I wasn't always optional. At 10:42 a.m., 18 minutes before the ceremony, I checked my phone one last time. No missed calls, no follow-up, no apology. Just that same message from my mother, sitting there like a final verdict. Don't make them feel bad on their vacation. I felt something settle in my chest then, not anger, not grief, something quieter, heavier, like a door closing very slowly. I didn't respond. I didn't tell my bridesmaids. I didn't tell Daniel. I didn't want pity. I didn't want whispers filling the air where joy was supposed to live. I turned my phone off and placed it face down on the nightstand. The ceremony went on. There were fewer guests than we'd planned, empty chairs where my family should have been. But the people who showed up fully. Daniel's parents hugged me like they'd been waiting years to do it. My friends cried openly, unapologetically. Daniel squeezed my hand when my voice shook. I said my vows. He said his. We kissed. Everyone clapped. Cameras flashed. Smiles were captured. Under the string lights, it all looked perfect, like the kind of wedding people pin to inspiration boards. But inside me, something was changing shape. Not exploding, hardening. That night, after the music faded and guests drifted upstairs to the bar, I stayed behind in the suite. The room was quiet now. Too quiet. I sat at the small desk by the window and opened my laptop. I didn't know yet what I was going to do. I only knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. I wasn't going to excuse them. I wasn't going to explain them. And I wasn't going to keep pretending this was accidental. While they raised champagne glasses by a pool and called themselves whole, they had made a choice. And for the first time in my life, so had I. I slept surprisingly well that night. Not because I felt at peace, far from it, but because something inside me had finally gone quiet. The constant questioning, the looping, maybe this time, the exhausting hope that never paid off. It all shut down like a switch flipped in a dark room. When I woke up, Daniel was still asleep beside me, one arm slung across my waist, his breathing slow and even. For a moment, I just watched him. The steadiness of him. The fact that he had shown up without conditions, without leverage, without needing to be convinced. I slipped out of bed carefully and went into the bathroom, closing the door softly behind me. I turned my phone back on. It buzzed instantly. Calls, messages, notifications stacking on top of each other so fast I couldn't read them all at once. Missed calls from my father, from my brother, from numbers I didn't recognize but immediately understood. Family friends, church acquaintances, people who had benefited indirectly from my generosity for years and now felt threatened. I didn't open any of them. I brushed my teeth, washed my face, looked at myself in the mirror. I didn't look devastated. I looked focused. At 10 o'clock, while Daniel was still asleep, I opened my laptop. I didn't do it in a rush. I didn't do it shaking or crying or fueled by adrenaline. That part surprised me the most. I did it calmly. First, the corporate cards. There were 6 active cards under my corporate umbrella, cards I'd allowed years ago because it felt easier than fighting. 2 were technically under my father's authority, justified as business development. 1 was in my brother's name for client travel, though he hadn't had a real client in years. 1 under my mother's name for charity outreach. The last 2 were aliases, fake vendor names, ghost accounts they used to funnel money quietly, assuming I wouldn't notice. I clicked through them one by one. Freeze, freeze, freeze. Each confirmation popped up clean and neutral, as if nothing dramatic was happening at all. Within minutes, every card was unusable. I imagined my father at a golf course later that day, waving a card that suddenly didn't work. My brother staring at a booking screen that refused to process. My mother standing at a restaurant, confused, embarrassed. The thought didn't make me smile. It just felt necessary. Second, the foundation. The Gaines Community Initiative. I had started it after my second software company went public. It was supposed to fund education grants, community programs, small business support. Something meaningful, something bigger than me. I had brought my family in because I wanted them to be proud of me, because I thought if they were involved, they'd finally see me as more than a convenient resource. Instead, they'd turned it into a trophy case. Lavish board dinners that cost more than most grants. International site visits that suspiciously aligned with luxury travel seasons, expenses that never quite made sense but always came with a casual explanation. I had noticed. I had screenshots, receipts, transaction history saved quietly, almost subconsciously. I froze the foundation's accounts and sent a formal notice to the board, citing financial discrepancies and initiating a full audit. No emotion, just facts. Then I forwarded the documentation I'd been collecting for years. Third, the trust. The trust had been set up before I turned 30. Generational, protective, designed to secure everyone's future. I had already been considering dissolving it long before the wedding. Watching them drain it without gratitude, without vision, without restraint had been eroding something in me. That morning, I initiated the process. I knew the language, I knew the safeguards, I knew the loopholes. It wouldn't collapse overnight, but it would end. By the time Daniel woke up, my family's lifestyle was already unraveling, and they had no idea yet. He found me sitting by the window, laptop closed, coffee untouched. "Hey," he said softly. "You okay?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and nodded. "I will be." He didn't push. He never did. We went out for brunch, just the 2 of us. A small cafe downtown. Normal. Quiet. The kind of place where nobody knew who I was or what I'd built or what I was quietly dismantling. When we got back to the hotel, I finally listened to the voicemails. My father's voice came first, tight, controlled, trying very hard not to sound panicked. "Elaine, call me. We need to talk. You've made a mistake." Then my brother, already angry. What the hell did you do to the cards? I was in the middle of booking something for Mom. Are you seriously trying to screw us over the day after your wedding? My mother's message was last. I told you not to make this about you. No apology. No concern. Just blame. I deleted them all. By afternoon, emails started coming in. The foundation board. Compliance. 2 junior attorneys. Everything was procedural now, official, documented. This wasn't personal. That evening, my brother called again. I let it go to voicemail. So this is it? He said. You're taking everything because we didn't show up to your wedding? You know how bad this makes you look? You're not hurting us. You're embarrassing yourself. Daniel listened beside me as I replayed it. When it ended, he took my phone, handed it back, and said, You're not punishing them. You're stopping the bleeding. That night, pizza boxes sat open on the balcony table, the city lights stretched out below us. No speeches, no justifications, just quiet. But I knew my family. They wouldn't stop. They never did. By Wednesday, it escalated. My mother somehow got through to a junior lawyer at the foundation, left a voicemail accusing me of abuse of power, claiming she was a co-founder, insisting I was sabotaging her life's work. He forwarded it to me with a question mark. I replied with one sentence, document it, do not respond. That night, my brother texted, You're dragging the whole family down over one weekend. This is why no one takes you seriously. Grow up. I stared at the message, waiting for something, anger, sadness, regret. Nothing came. They still thought this was a tantrum. They thought I'd calm down. They didn't understand that this wasn't about the wedding. The wedding just made it undeniable. I wasn't upset anymore. I was finished. By Thursday morning, the calls had stopped sounding confused. They sounded rehearsed. That was how I knew my family had switched strategies. First came the lawyer. His email landed in my inbox just after 8 a.m., polite and ominous in that way only attorneys master. He claimed to represent concerned parties and suggested my recent actions regarding the trust and foundation had caused distress, financial harm, and potential reputational damage. He recommended we discuss reconsideration and restitution before things escalated. I recognized his name immediately. My father had used him years ago during a deal that smelled wrong but never quite crossed a line, at least not one anyone could prove. I didn't call him. I sent one email back. All relevant funds originate from my personal income and remain under my legal authority. There is nothing further to discuss. I attached documentation, CC'd my legal team. 3 hours later, he replied with a single word. Understood. Daniel raised an eyebrow when I showed him. That bad? That final, I said. That night, my parents tried something different. My father showed up. I opened the door just enough to see his face. Red, tight, already angry. He didn't ask how I was. Didn't mention the wedding. Didn't acknowledge the silence he'd participated in. He went straight for accusation. You humiliated us, he said loudly. I had a board meeting canceled. Greg's car doesn't even work. What do you think you're doing? I stayed quiet. We brought you in, he continued. We backed you even when you were impossible, and this is how you repay your own blood? Still, I didn't respond. You think your husband's going to be enough when this all crashes? He snapped. You think you're something without us? I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. It's over, I said calmly. Every tie, financial, legal, family. His mouth opened like he had more ready. Threats maybe, or guilt dressed as concern. I walked back inside and locked the door. The next day, they made it public. My sister, who hadn't reached out before or after the wedding, posted a long thread online. She painted herself as the mediator, the voice of reason, claimed I'd cut off the family without warning, said money had changed me, that our parents were heartbroken. She attached photos from Napa, photos I wasn't in. She framed it as healing, as unity, as something I'd chosen not to attend. The replies came fast. Strangers speculated. Some sided with her. Others called me cold. A few people I recognized were tagged. Friends, former colleagues. I didn't respond. I forwarded the post to my lawyer and told him to finalize the second audit. If they wanted sympathy, I would give them facts. Saturday morning, an email arrived from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Jenna. She'd worked with the foundation briefly before leaving quietly. No drama, no exit interview. Her subject line was simple. I think you should have this. 10 minutes later, a shared drive appeared. It held over 100 files. Receipts, emails, expense reports, voice recordings. Jenna had documented everything. Months of fraud, fake conferences, personal expenses disguised as nonprofit costs, forged approvals, with my digital signature copied and reused. Trips labeled as outreach that coincided perfectly with resort bookings. I sent the entire archive to my legal team. My lawyer called me within minutes. "This isn't mismanagement," he said. "This is fraud." 3 days later, the foundation board froze all remaining accounts and suspended operations. A public statement went out citing internal investigation and cooperation with authorities. No names. They didn't need to name names. That night, my mother texted, "You went too far. No apology. Just blame." I didn't respond. The next morning, a journalist reached out. He said he was reviewing public filings and had questions about the foundation's sudden suspension. I pointed him to the right records. Then Tuesday, an email from the IRS landed in my inbox. A formal audit had been triggered by a whistleblower. I hadn't reported them. I didn't need to. While they sipped mimosas at a pool during my wedding weekend, they had been sealing their own fate. Now they faced audits, legal scrutiny, and press exposure. I gave them the one thing they couldn't control: silence and consequences. By Friday, the quiet from their side felt different, calculated, strategic. But this time, no one was left to shield them. The foundation locked them out completely. My father tried calling an old mentor of mine. The mentor told him, "Elaine owns this. You don't." That weekend, the first article went live. It didn't speculate. It documented. Photos circulated soon after. Uncle Greg on a yacht. My mother holding a clipboard at a resort. My brother at a poker table labeled team building seminar. 2 major donors withdrew funding the next day. Both issued brief statements saying they'd been misled. I hadn't heard from my family in over a week when my brother showed up at 11 p.m. He rang the bell nonstop. I didn't let him in. From the sidewalk, he called me. "You win," he said bitterly. "You destroyed everything. Hope you're happy." He talked about Mom not eating, Dad stressed, Greg panicking. Then he added, "We're going to sue." "For what?" I asked. "Emotional distress, something like that." "Good luck," I said. "I have the documents, the ownership, the signatures." There was a pause. Then he said the thing that finally clarified everything. "You were supposed to take care of us. Not we were wrong, not we're sorry. Just entitlement." When I went back inside, Daniel was waiting. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. For the first time, I truly was. Monday arrived without ceremony. No dramatic phone call, no apology dressed up as concern, just paperwork. At exactly 9:13 a.m., my legal team forwarded me a formal complaint. My parents, my brother, my sister, all listed as plaintiffs. They were suing me for breach of fiduciary duty, emotional harm, reputational damage, and something vaguely labeled familial obligation. The document was long, theatrical, and heavy on language about betrayal and abuse of power. It read like a performance. I didn't feel insulted. I felt tired. Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table while I scrolled through it, his coffee untouched. "Are you scared?" he asked carefully. "No," I said, and realized it was true. I'm done being surprised by them. Our lawyers responded within 48 hours. Not defensively, decisively. They filed a countersuit thick with evidence. Jenna's archive, transaction histories, forged approvals, internal communications. It didn't just refute their claims, it dismantled them. Within days, their attorney asked for an extension, then another, then silence. The banks moved next. 2 financial institutions closed all foundation-linked accounts pending investigation. Cards were cut. Lines of credit revoked. Even their lawyer's retainer became an issue. Then the IRS formally stepped in. Charitable disbursements were halted, assets frozen. The structure my family had leaned on for years collapsed almost overnight. That was when the begging started. My sister emailed first. She said she'd always been caught in the middle, that she understood my pain, that she never meant for things to go this far. She asked if we could talk. I didn't reply. My mother showed up at my office a week later. She looked smaller, older, quieter. She asked the receptionist if she could see me. I sent word back that I was unavailable. When she finally left, I felt a brief tug of something. Habit, maybe. The old instinct to comfort her even when she was the one who hurt me. It passed. A month later, the lawsuit was withdrawn. Quietly. No announcement, no explanation. They couldn't afford discovery. They couldn't risk testimony. They couldn't survive the truth being examined under oath. And just like that, the noise stopped. My father moved into a small rental outside the city. Uncle Greg crashed on a friend's couch. My brother started freelancing, his once confident voice reduced to short, guarded messages when he spoke to mutual acquaintances. My mother was frozen out of the charity world entirely. No one returned her calls. No one wanted their name near hers. Daniel never once said, "I told you so." Instead, he kept reminding me to eat, to sleep, to breathe. He said letting go wasn't loss. It was clarity. 6 months passed. The foundation dissolved. The investigations concluded. The case closed. And then something unexpected happened. I became a mother. Our son arrived early. Healthy, loud, impossibly present. Holding him rewired something in me. Not in a sentimental way, in a grounding way. For the first time, love didn't feel like something I had to earn or prove. We named him Jacob. Just a name we liked. Simple, untangled. We threw him a small first birthday party. Friends, Daniel's parents, the people who had shown up at our wedding without conditions. I sent one invitation to my parents. No note, no explanation, no leverage. They didn't respond. No message, no gift, no acknowledgement. For a second, I felt it. The old flicker of hope. The reflex to wonder what I could have done differently. Then Jacob laughed, smacking a toy dinosaur against the table, completely absorbed in the moment. And the feeling dissolved. This time there was no money involved, no access, no advantage. Just an invitation to a child's birthday. And even that wasn't enough. I wasn't angry. I was clear. My family wasn't missing. They were never really there. But now I had a new one. And this one chose me back. 6 months after everything collapsed, life didn't feel dramatic anymore. It felt quiet, not the hollow quiet I'd grown up with, the kind filled with unanswered questions and unreturned calls, but a steady, grounded silence, the kind that didn't demand anything from me, the kind that let me breathe. Jacob slept in my arms as I sat by the living room window, his tiny chest rising and falling in soft, uneven rhythms. Newborn sounds filled the apartment, little sighs, faint grunts, the occasional hiccup that startled him awake just long enough to frown. Daniel stood nearby, washing bottles at the sink, humming off key. He did that when he was nervous or happy, or both. Mostly both. This was it. No audience, no performance, no one keeping score. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing for impact. When people asked how I was doing, I didn't say fine out of habit anymore. I said good, and meant it. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was pretending to be. The legal aftermath faded slowly. Final documents signed, accounts closed, loose ends tied off by professionals who spoke in careful language and neutral tones. No more emergency calls, no more threats disguised as concern, no more waiting for the other shoe to drop. My family didn't try again. Not really. There were no dramatic apologies, no late-night confessions, no tearful realizations about love and regret. Just absence. And I learned something unexpected about absence when it stops hurting. It starts clarifying. I thought I'd feel victorious watching their world shrink, but I didn't. I felt removed, like I'd stepped out of a long-running play and only then realized how exhausting it had been to stay in character for so long. My father never called. My mother sent one email months later. 3 sentences, carefully worded. She said she hoped I was well, that she prayed for Jacob, that she wished things had turned out differently. She didn't say sorry. I read it once, then I deleted it. Not out of anger, out of honesty. Because the truth was, I didn't need anything from her anymore. Not closure, not acknowledgement, not understanding. I had already given myself what she never could. Time passed in small, meaningful ways. Daniel took midnight feedings so I could sleep. I learned the difference between Jacob's hungry cry and his tired one. We argued about diapers and laughed about nothing. We lived in the middle of ordinary days that didn't require recovery afterward. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the wedding. Not the hurt part. The moment just before I turned my phone off. The moment I still believed that maybe, if I waited long enough, they'd show up. I didn't judge that version of myself anymore. She was trying to survive with the tools she had. But I was done waiting. On Jacob's first birthday, after everyone left and the apartment settled back into stillness, I stood by the window again. City lights blinked on and off like distant signals. Daniel wrapped an arm around me and rested his chin on my shoulder. "Any regrets?" he asked quietly. I thought about it. I thought about the years I'd spent minimizing myself to keep others comfortable, the checks I'd written without question, the excuses I'd made on their behalf, the emotional labor I'd carried like it was my responsibility to fix what they broke. "No," I said, "just lessons." He kissed my temple. "Good ones?" "Hard ones," I replied, "but real." Jacob stirred in his crib, then settled again. I looked at him and felt something solid anchor in my chest. This was the break I needed. Not the kind where everything gets repaired. The kind where you stop trying to repair what was never built to last. I didn't destroy my family. I stopped funding a lie. I stopped protecting people who mistook access for love. And when there was nothing left for them to take, they disappeared, because that's all they had ever come for. Now there was no leverage, no money, no obligation. Just me, and the family I chose. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was free.